Hi and welcome to Kegels and Coffee. My name is Isabel and I'm your host. Of course, the moment I feel ready to record this intro, I barely have a voice, so be it. Until now, I've been literally doing everything possible to avoid sitting down to try and figure out how I wanted to introduce this interview with my father. It just felt daunting and I didn't understand why. But I think I might not be the only one who feels the complexity of a father-daughter relationship. For me, at least, there is an array of feelings, and it's hard to sort them out. Maybe I don't have to, because life isn't perfect and no relationship ever is. God knows my dad and I have butt heads many, many times. In Germany, you call a stubborn person a Sturkopf, which literally translates to stubborn head. And last time my dad and I were arguing and I called him a Sturkopf, he stopped and just laughed at me. Of course I knew what he was thinking. We were both looking at a mirror. But beneath my father's stubborn head lies a very tender heart. Unlike me, he doesn't wear it on his sleeve. My dad told me that when I was a little girl, I asked him what he did all day at the office. So he explained to me what being the CEO of Quante, a technology company that supplied the national telephone network, looked like. Meetings, agreements, negotiations, attending conventions such as the Hannover Messe, things like that. Apparently my response was, I can do that. He had high hopes for me and believed that I had what it took to be a leader and a manager. But my stubborn head took a turn into a different direction after graduating from university. I knew deep down inside that I wanted to create a dance company that would perform on a climbing wall. Not exactly what my father had in mind for me, but I still could feel his pride after stepping off stage and being greeted by him with open arms, a big smile, and always a huge bouquet of flowers. In our conversation, my father talks about having to flee during the war and growing up with very little, but having a mother who was literally a powerhouse, smart, strong, inventive, and always finding opportunities. He tells the story of how, as a very young boy, when seeing for the first time a Black American soldier coming in on a jeep, he thought it was Balthazar, one of the three kings from the Bible, and he actually choked up when telling the story. But I was so hit off guard that my reaction was to laugh, which I really, truly regret because it was obviously a deeply impacting post-war memory. A 4-year-old boy looking at one of the three kings coming to help, bringing supplies. I know now why it has been so hard for me to make myself sit down and finally try to find words to introduce this episode. Because there are no words that can actually express the gratitude I feel toward him, and of course my mom, for all that they have done for me and my brother. I cannot truly understand what it means not to have food or shelter or having to flee during a war. But what I do know is that my dad has a brilliant mind. And once he sets his mind to something, he always finds a way, including earning a Fulbright scholarship where only 3 of 300 applicants were chosen to study in the U.S. With a diploma in mechanical engineering and business administration from TU Berlin, as well as a Master of Science in Business Administration from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, my father, little by little, picked up the pieces and built the life he'd always dreamed of, and I feel very grateful to be part of it.
No, seriously, what am I doing with my life?
How did that come across? Did they hear me?
I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind.
You're messed up.
I need to just Netflix and chill.
Like, I'm gonna meditate like a badass.
It's just like this psychotic break, and then I get my period, and I'm like, oh, it was just your period again.
Am I the only one feeling this crazy? Hallöchen, meine Schnuckinase. You have to explain to me, how do I say Schnucki-Nase in English?
Yeah, I don't think you can translate that.
You said something.
Schnucky nose.
There's nothing like a Schnucki-Nase. I love that word so much. It's funny how sometimes the translations of certain words are just not possible. But anyways, thank you for sitting with me. I know we usually speak in German, so that's interesting to have this conversation in English. So I would like to start my conversation with, you were born and raised during a pretty challenging time and place, post-World War II in Germany. And I was wondering, what are some of your earliest memories? And I'm assuming there were some hard ones, but also some beautiful ones. I'm just curious, like, what are some of the first memories you have of that time?
Well, it's very difficult to say exactly when my first memories start. It was in Königsbach, where we fled to when we left Thüringen, because it was occupied by the Russians. And it was very difficult for Mommy to get us over. I mean, Geli, my sister, was just born in 1945 in February on the flight, and then she had to bring us over to Western Germany, and we ended up at a place where a friend of her lived. She went to the same boarding school than Mommy for a year, and so they knew each other, and she accepted that we would come. She still owned a castle, a very impressive one. Half of the castle was occupied by the French military, and this was turned into some sort of a hospital there, and in the other half the family lived, and we lived there the first time in the castle itself, and then afterwards we had to move outside because Mommy wanted to not be under the rule of the old lady, the mother of Tante Olga, and she was a dragon, and she was very difficult, and so we moved into a small apartment above what the old horse barn or horse den was, and which was used for parking cars or equipment for the farm. And I remember that this was extremely cold in the winter time, and I remember also that Mommy just tried to bind our hands under the blanket because she didn't want that we would freeze the hands because it was not heatable. The room that we were living in, Friedewil and I, and but on the other hand, I remember that the life was in this environment was really exciting because we were able as little kids to play in the park, try to get over a self-made bridge on a little river there, and do all sorts of things that were actually not allowed, but really made life really, really interesting and funny. And Tante Olga wanted to adopt me and told Mommy that you have 3 kids and you can't even, feed them. Why don't you just give me your second son, which was me. And Mommy, of course, who had fought all her flight to keep us together, did not agree to that. So she said, "No, there's no way to discuss this." And so she adopted another person, Joachim Arnim, and that was interesting because this was the guy that I played with mostly because he was exactly my age, and we still are a little bit in contact. Friedewil more than I, this was my first youth, starting in my memory is up back to, let's say, 1947 when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
And we left there to go to Munich in 1950. And so I think there were 3 or 4 years that I can still remember how we worked in a little garden and all those things.
Nice. So a mixed bag of experiences, obviously. One thing that I always loved about Großmutti, my grandmother, your mother, I got to know her for some time, was I just always loved how thrifty and positive and inventive she was. And clearly that is a combination of her personality, but also the circumstances that she had as, you know, a single mother after her husband was killed during the war. Can you give me an example that you have in mind, or a story of just like that I don't know, that energy that she had, that positivity and like that creativity? For example, how she, you know, always makes the most out of what she has.
Well, Mommy was one of those wonderful women that mastered the chaos after a lost war, and were able to build a family without husband, without father to kids, because of course most of them fell in the war. There was actually only Uncle Ola who was coming, you know, he was the only survivor of the generation of my father. Male survivor. And so there were very strong women. There were a few ones that really didn't master it, and they had a horrible time. But these strong women were also the ones that rebuilt Germany after the war. I mean, most of the men were gone. You know, there were millions of deaths, and so they had to do what usually men's function was at that time. So they were strong, and she was especially strong because she came from a farm, which also had a castle, but which didn't run so well. They had very sandy soil because they were directly on the Baltic Sea. And they had a tough way to, you know, there was no luxury there. They ate once a week, they ate meat. And so it was not that she lived in a very prosperous family. And she learned from her mother, Großmutti, that you know, that there's always a chance to do that. You just have to be inventive, and you just, you know, look at life positive, and there's always a way to get around. And that really was her big strength. She was always positive. She was always friendly, and that's why she was so successful after the war, because all the people in the administration who had to give her the support, or, you know, to give her a place to live with the kids and so on. In the end, she was so persistent and so friendly that the people just did everything for her, and that helped her a lot. And this is really one of the things that really is so remarkable. And if you, as grandchildren, remember her the same way, it shows that this was an extraordinary woman.
Yeah. And one thing that I remember knowing her during the time that I had with her was, so after you went to Munich, she was renting out a room to foreign students. And I had to laugh because the other day I think you said that sometimes she had American students, and that these students were kind of impressive for you, exciting. They were from America, and you said they had chewing gums and cars, and obviously the luxury of being able to, you know, travel. So how do you feel? How did that feel? Were you impressed? I mean, because also America helped rebuild Germany with the Marshall Plan, but then also having these American students there, I'm curious, like, what was it that you felt was, I guess, exciting or admirable?
Well, number one was my first Americans I saw, I remember exactly, was in Königsbach. I must have been 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And there was a Jeep coming in, and I was absolutely astonished because I saw 3 white ones and a Moor. I thought it was one of the like in the Bible, the black man that was sitting there and coming in with them. And I told Mommy, there's the Moor. She always told me. That was so funny. And that was the first time. And you have to understand, the Americans were the only ones that didn't try to revenge after the war. I mean, they were the ones that lost many people in the war. They fought the National Socialism and Germany. And they were the only ones that rebuilt Germany with the Marshall Plan and gave us a chance. The other enemies, like England and France, also from World War I, did nothing else than try to revenge. That, okay, we will be sure that you never are able to, to build up your economy or do something industrial. You have to be bombed down to be a farming country and so on. So it is a completely different approach, which I think is based in kind of the Christian belief that America has, where even the ones that are not going to church, they have this humanitarian belief in doing good things and what is right and what's wrong. And that impressed, of course, everyone in Germany, because the Americans were the only soldiers that were really loved by Germans, because they were so kind and they tried to help, and that was unique. And that's why my dream was always, well, I want to go and see what that country looks like, because at that time they were said that 80% of the people in America have a house as a property and had a car. I mean, that was unimaginable in destroyed Germany. And I wanted to look at it and see why is this possible? What happens there that's so different?
Yeah, which was one of the things I also wanted to talk about, but I want to backtrack for just a second, because hearing you talk about Großmutti, my grandmother, I always think about how I feel about you, because I've always looked up to how successful you have been in your life and what you have built and what you have done for us, our family, which is very impressive. I mean, you were a student of engineering and economics, and you really built such a stable life for us, which, we could talk about that forever. But one of the things I also wanted to mention was when you decided that you wanted to apply for the Fulbright scholarship, which, relates to what you were saying about wanting to go to America, that is a very competitive scholarship. And when you did that, knowing how smart and studious you were, but still, did you feel like you actually had a chance, or were you just kind of, because there were a lot of applicants for it, right?
Oh yes. I mean, I heard later on that we were 300 applicants in Berlin at that year, and 3 were chosen. So it was a very small chance. But I didn't think about the chance to get it or not, or if I would be chosen. I just was eager to go, and I was eager to go, and I just said, well, I have to go, and the only way I could go was if somebody financed it, because we were poor. I had nothing, no money, and I knew how expensive America was, especially the school. So there would have been no possibility at all without a scholarship, and that was a scholarship that is actually worldwide. It's all over Europe. When we all met together in Bremerhaven to get shipped to the United States, at that time the travel was done by ship. There were the French and there were the Italians and there were from everywhere, and it's a very impressive organization, the Fulbright organization, and it's a fantastic thing to do. And I probably would have been tempted to stay in America after I finished my master's degree in the school where they sent me. But there was an agreement between the Fulbright organization and all the countries where they were active, that the students that were chosen had to go back at least 2 years to their old countries because they didn't want a brain drain that you just take, gifted people or people who are, eager to work and bring them to America and then integrate them in their own staff right away. So I was not allowed to stay immediately after the year that they found us in America. I had to go back to Germany anyway.
Mm-hmm. You told me this really funny story because you also did a trip while you were here. You took advantage and did a trip through the U.S. I think with Jürgen. Was it with Jürgen?
No, that was with Günther, Frankenberg, and we too, and then we added two more, and they were Fulbright students, but they were of course in different states. Günther was in Maine, and the other ones were in India. I don't know, somewhere Indiana or something like that. So. We met then afterwards, and we bought a cheap car, and traveled 10,000 miles around in America after that.
Isn't there a story where it got really, really hot, and you were like at the Hoover Dam or something, and you ended up sleeping with your legs in the water?
Well, yeah, that was one of the things. It was, of course, in the summer, and we had the weirdest weather experiences. For instance, in Yellowstone Park. We went there, and we were not equipped for a winter type of climate. And suddenly it started snowing, and we had a half a yard of snow, 3 feet, and we didn't know what to do because we just had a tent, and we knew that the tent wasn't enough to keep us warm. So we went there and rented a small cabin there and bought a lot of wood that we could, heat the wood stove. And that was in the middle of August.
Wow.
Believe. And then when we came to Las Vegas, of course, and everyone wants to go to Las Vegas and see the shows and enjoy it without spending money. Of course, we didn't have money to play or do something like that. But we did that, and of course we weren't able to pay a hotel room or something like that. So we had to go somewhere. And we went out and said, well, where's the closest place that we could, put our tent up? And the other thing that we needed was water because we had to cool down. At night it was as warm as during the day. It was just amazing. It just didn't cool down. So we went to Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, and we slept without anything on the beach, and of course, after 2 hours you were so hot that you wake up and then had to jump in the water again, and then somebody said, well, this doesn't make sense, so we just put our we lie on the border of the lake, and just the lower part is under the water and the other part is over the water, and then we get cool all night. I remember that. It was but then the problem is if you are sleeping with your feet in the water and you get up in the next morning, your skin looks a little bit like a crocodile.
Oh my God, that is so funny. I always consider you a little bit like a black sheep of your family. And of course, I mean, because I look at your brother and your sister and my cousins, and they're all still in Germany. Do you feel like that's how your mom saw you, kind of the black sheep, because you went to America, and not only that, you ended up having an American girlfriend who then became your wife. You also moved to Spain for a job and then back to Germany. So I've always seen you as somebody in your family that is not quite as conventional, because our family there is pretty German. I mean, pretty, like together and traditional, and you were more of the adventurer, I think, right?
Well, it was the role that I had as a second son. My brother, Friedewald, was the oldest one, and my mother, he had practically he grew into the role of a father.
Right.
And so he was 3 years older, and he was very, very conscious of his responsibility. And Mommy couldn't deal with money. I mean, she couldn't really manage it. So when he was 14, he already was responsible for the finances of the family. And he was the one that, not only by his maybe his genes and the way he is, but I think because he grew into this responsibility that he was the person that was not able to do what he wanted. And I, had no restrictions. I could do whatever I want. And so I was kind of the person that, could develop in any direction. And that was more the case. And of course, I used this possibility to live a life. I studied a long time, which is remarkable because I didn't have any money, but I got 200 Deutschmark. That was the money that Mommy got from me as a semi-orphan. And so, I just tried to get through life without really working at the beginning, but learning and having exciting life as a student, because a student in Germany is something very free. You are not like in a school, but you are totally dependent on that you want something, that you do something, because there are requirements that you fulfill, but if you fulfill them in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, nobody looks after that. So you develop as an independent and a creative person by just being able to do what you want.
Yeah. That is very impressive. I feel like I just look back at what you have built in your life with so very little to begin with is, very impressive, and something I think my generation probably will never quite understand. How do you feel like your mom and your siblings felt about you being more of the, that person that was going around and trying these other things? Were they supportive?
Well, Mommy, and that was obvious, I was number one for her. So because she said, she always, Friede will always complain that, Hagi can do everything. Well, and he can't do anything. So I had the sympathy of my mother, and I had the sympathy of my grandmother Rade. As Friede, as a firstborn, was the favorite of my other grandmother, Rittberg. She was born Moltke, and she was very much into, who is going to be the next count, and who is going to be, and when we go back, he will have the farm and the castle and so on. So he was, she would do everything for him, and my mother and my grandmother Rade, they would do everything for me. So there was kind of a division of who is the favorite.
Yeah, I think I even noticed growing up that you were the favorite for her. However, I do remember also, and I don't know if this story is true or not, that when you decided to marry an American, that didn't land so well.
Well, Mommy was always afraid that I would go to America, that I would go and leave her in Germany, and that I wouldn't be there anymore. And so that was always there. I mean, she was afraid because her sister, Tante Helga, was going to Canada after the World War, because she said, well, the Russians will come and everyone will be leaving anyway. So she went, and she saw how alienating that is with your relationship to the German family who is in Germany, who do their own things. And of course, even if you visit 1 or twice a year, or even every 2 years only once, this does not replace the binding that we have within the family and the experiences of living together and so on. I see that already when we are the whole summer in the United States here and on Flathead Lake. you practically miss all the weddings and the baptisms and so on. So you really are not, directly in the family. You're just a kind of an outsider. That's true.
Yeah, and I definitely felt that growing up. And Mommy and I were talking about that also, the double life. And it's hard because it's so beautiful and it brings so much opportunity. I mean, if I hadn't had the opportunity to spend my summers here, I probably would have never come to the United States and gone to college here. And it's been such a wonderful experience to grow up bilingually and knowing my American grandmother and father as well. And at the same time, when I would leave for the summers to come here, from a German little village, I would miss out on all the things that the girls at the, stalls were doing with the horses. And yeah, it's like, it's a beautiful thing. And it's also, like you said, it creates like this weird rift or like double life. It's almost a little schizophrenic, I feel like sometimes, to have those both worlds going at the same time. And now I am doing the same thing with my husband, Pata, in between Spain and Colorado. But yeah, I've always wondered about that, how that would be if you just had stayed in one place your whole life. But I'm at the same time personally very grateful for having had the chance to live both lives and get to know so much. And it opens your mind and just creates new possibilities. Talking about America, my memory of the relationship that we had with America was, I grew up during the last ends of, Berlin being split in half and the Berlin Wall going down when I was 9 years old and John F. Kennedy saying, "Ich bin ein Berliner." That was an interesting time as well, right? Because Germany was so divided. And I remember, as a child, I don't obviously have that many memories about it, but that was still a pretty difficult time to get through.
Yeah, well, it is interesting that we were in a state of constant Cold War, constant enemy behavior from Russia, and it was always, it was unstable because anything could have triggered a Third World War. But it turned out that this Cold War was more stable than we are seeing now, what happens in Europe, because of the fact that the West was united and was not giving in. Nobody dared to use atomic weapons or start a conventional war. Because he knew that he would not be winning, and everyone knew everyone would lose, and the continent Europe would have been destroyed for sure. So in the end, it turned out that this Cold War with this massive armies on both sides and this massive threat of atomic bombs, kept everyone, in its place, and nobody was daring to do what Putin did now with Ukraine. So in the end, I think that, for instance, Berlin could not have been defended. The Russians were all over there around it, but of course they knew that if they would keep or get Berlin, the threat of an atomic war would have been reality.
Right.
I personally enjoyed to be in West Berlin, because West Berlin was really different from West Germany. It was a town with extreme liberties. Everyone could do what he wanted. The restrictions were much less than anywhere else, because the people just like to live. And like in a prison, you do whatever you can to enjoy your life. And that was there. The Berliners really tried to just enjoy the life. And we at that time in West Germany, for instance, there was a curfew from 10 o'clock on. The people over 60, under 16 couldn't go out anymore. and everyone had to be at 12 o'clock, nothing, there was no bar open and nothing and so on. But in Berlin, there was nothing, no limitations. You could go 4 o'clock in the bar and drink something. And also they were more tolerant, the lesbians and the homosexual people felt that they could, they could be living there without being bothered and without being persecuted, because at that time it was not allowed. It was illegal, and there nobody would care if two boys would dance together or something. And that was, and also, of course, it was a city which had a huge number of students. They had the Free University, the Technical University, and many other university-like schools. And there were, at least 50, 100,000 students in the whole of Berlin, and that formed also, and they are more open and more demanding in terms of future possibilities and liberties and so on. So it was a unique environment for me as a student and as a young person. And I don't regret having spent so much time there in Berlin.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it still is a very, very special place and city, very unique and very different from the rest of Germany, I think, these days. The other day, I called you a Sturkopf, and you laughed because stubbornhead. A stubbornhead, because I don't know, I wanted you to do this and you did that, and then I was like, that you're a stubbornhead, and he said, look who's talking. So I guess my question, what do you see in me, of you, good or bad? I'm just very curious. You can be completely honest.
Well, I think that it's not about bad or good or whatever. It's about how we tick and how we go. And I think that you have a lot of similarities. Number one, we both, and I have a very developed ego. I mean, this is what makes you, if you're working in the industry, that was the basis for my career, that I really wanted to do and wanted to prove that I could do it, and was very self-confident. And that's something that you have to. You always did what you wanted, and you wanted, once you had an idea, then it was not only an idea, but you wanted to pursue it. And you always believed in yourself. You always believed that you could do everything that you wanted, and then, of course, most of the things go right because you have to believe in yourself. The second thing is, of course, that we are persistent. I think that if my ego tells me I'm right. If I do something, I do it the best way, and if somebody says, no, you can do that better, then I say, no, shit, I don't do it. So I know better. This is the thing that comes with the ego, that we try to do it our way, and we try to be not thinking that, maybe the other one is more clever and can do it, and how do it does. We don't ask anyone, how would you do that? We just do it. And that's something that I obviously have too. Now, if this is positive or negative, I don't believe that you can say that, because it depends on what do you do to your friends and to your family and so on. Where do you hurt them, or do you hurt them at all, or are they happy that you do what you do? And this is, I think, the question that we have. I have a problem to learn to be tolerant and listen to others and so on. In the old age, it gets easier, of course, because we're not every day, at the top of a company that you have to make decisions and tell everyone what to do. In my now I'm in a household where I have nothing to decide. If I decided is according to Gretchen, is probably wrong. So that's a different thing. And the other thing is, the ambition. I'm ambitious. I wanted to get somewhere. I was ashamed when I was a young person because we didn't have any money. We couldn't wear the clothes that the other ones had. Our parents didn't have a car where they picked us up in the boarding school and so on. All that we didn't have. And that made I was really ashamed. And I swore to myself, I will make sure that this will be different when I get up and work and so on, and that my children have a better chance to live, the way they want to do. And that's this ambition. I think you have too, which is a good thing. If it's too much, it can be, obnoxious to others. But it's the basis of success. You just have to have the ambition to do something and get after it and have the persistence to get to the very end.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I feel like this is the perfect way to end. And I am also very, very grateful for all the hard work that you have done for us. I deeply, profoundly, widely appreciate it and all the opportunity that I've gotten in my life because of it.
I love you.
I love you too. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Big hug, abrazos und bis bald.